Rehan, a 20-year-old Muslim in New York, spends his nights glued to his phone, endlessly scrolling at 3 a.m. His room is a mess, clothes scattered, dust accumulating. The only light comes from his phone screen, switching between social media and videos. His mother has called him 3 times, but he's lost in a sea of open tabs. Islamic lectures he meant to watch mixed with inappropriate content keeping him awake. When Fajr prayer time arrives at 5:30 a.m., multiple alarms ring. He silences them and turns over. Outside, the call to prayer echoes, birds sing, and the sun rises, but Rahan stays motionless. By 11 a.m., he wakes up, guilt settling in. His phone is flooded with notifications, including one from his mother. Did you pray Fajr? Fajr has long passed and Dhuhr is near. As always, he tells himself, I'll change tomorrow, inshallah. But his cluttered room mocks this broken promise. He tries to study for medical exams, but gets distracted by his phone. Just for a minute, he tells himself, which turns into hours of scrolling. A notification about his exam jolts him into panic. Another wasted day. As Maghrib approaches, guilt weighs heavily. He moves toward his prayer mat, but gets distracted by a new episode of his favorite show. Just one, he rationalizes. 3 episodes later, he rushes through his prayer, feeling frustrated. What's wrong with me? At dinner, he sits with his family, feeling distant. His little sister shares what she learned at Islamic school, and his father discusses mosque events. His mother watches him. Rehan, she says gently, there's a youth program at the mosque this weekend. You should go. Without looking up, he dismisses her, mumbling about studying. His parents exchange a worried glance. Late that night, Rehan remains glued to his phone. He starts an Islamic lecture, but soon strays to inappropriate content. Excitement turns to shame, then to self-hatred. He locks his phone, then unlocks it again. An endless cycle. For a moment, he opens his Quran app, but the words feel distant. His heart is too heavy. He finally looks in the mirror. His face is tired, but more than that, his soul is exhausted. Overwhelmed, he falls onto his prayer mat, tears streaming down his face. Ya Allah, he cries, I can't do this anymore. Please help me. For the first time in years, his words are not empty. That night, he dreams of standing before the Kaaba. A glowing man approaches and speaks. Your phone isn't the problem. It's your lack of purpose. Your bed doesn't trap you. Shaitan does. Being alone isn't your biggest struggle. Being distant from Allah is. Rehan wakes up with hope. He makes wudu and prays at the mosque. He believes this is his turning point. But like most bursts of motivation, it doesn't last. Back home, the same feelings creep in. He unlocks his phone, promising to use it wisely. But soon he is drawn into inappropriate content again. 2 hours pass. Guilt weighs heavier than before. Then out of nowhere, his mother knocks. Good work, she says. Now come eat. Shock floods him. Did she think he was studying? The shame is unbearable. In frustration, he smashes his phone onto the ground. But instead of relief, he feels Shaitan's grip tightening. Dragging himself to the kitchen, he asks, Mother, what did you think I was doing? Weren't you studying? I thought you woke up early. Relief washes over him. He picks up his second phone, intending to escape into more scrolling, but the battery is dead. This unexpected pause gives him a moment to reflect. Instead of reaching for the charger, he grabs his journal and starts writing. He realizes his problem isn't just social media, it's his obsession with control. He recalls a video on overthinking and learns to let go. Trying to quit by obsessing over quitting only makes it harder, he writes. The depression lingers because he fears relapsing. But then he remembers the old man's words. Satan is the culprit. Suddenly, he sees it clearly. He has been a slave to the same voice that once pushed him to waste time, and now it fuels his self-doubt. But this time, Rehan refuses to let Shaitan define his fate. He acknowledges its presence, but vows not to let it dictate his happiness. He writes down the old man's wisdom, determined to break the cycle. Then he asks himself, why am I doing this? And at that moment, everything clicks. His struggle is spiritual. Just then, he hears a familiar sound. His phone is fully charged. He stares at the screen. He reaches for it and hesitates. He feels two forces pulling at him, one urging him to return to his old ways, the other reminding him of his commitment to change. A voice tempts him. You can always do the real work later. But this time, Rehan fights back. Just because I want it doesn't mean it's good for me. And now the question turns to the reader. What would you do in Rehan's shoes?